Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Asana, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton. With me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing very good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good today, too. Thanks for asking. And thank you all for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we will talk about more of the changes taking place in the infrastructure of the Kriya Yoga Asana program as a result of a deeper understanding of spiritual law. Listen as we explain the second revision by introducing the divine idea of the Salutations. In this show, we will explain the function of the spiritual truth that underlies this universe. All there is the one divine life. Individuals have a concept about this truth, which is a thought that appears as form. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and realize spiritual truth. Swami, we have a lot of work ahead of us, but first what I'd like to do is talk about the title of the program. It's Kriya Yoga Asana Program Revision 2, and we talked about Revision 1 last week. What inspired you to want to revise the Asana program?
Well, I think what we're really striving for here is to have a demonstrable spiritual science, that you really want to be able to demonstrate divine law with scientific certainty. This was something that I found was missing in our program. And so as a result of a deeper understanding of spiritual law, I started to make these subtle revisions in our approach to asana. And I think a major revision in the asana class is that we no longer build it from a physical foundation, that this being a spiritual science, spirit must be cause. And so as a result, we bypass all the needs that we were building it from, that the physical body has needs. And we bypass that by accepting spiritual identity, because as spirit, we are eternal. As spirit, we are indestructible. And as spirit, we are in the changeless state of being.
So we talked about a deeper understanding of spiritual law. So what is that? How is that going to change our perception of asana?
Well, it's not just going to change our perception of asana, but it's going to change our whole outlook on life. Because for the most part, we have a belief in two powers. We have a belief in the law of karma. We believe in matter, basically. And in doing so, we are in violation of spiritual law, which is the law of the one. That there is one divine life. And when you drop down from the one into the belief in the many, then you're no longer under the government of this divine law, which is absolute life, absolute goodness, eternal love, and it's changeless. And then we move into the changing conditions of a personal mentality, which becomes the cycle of death and rebirth, which is what we are trying to liberate ourselves from. And so what I discovered is that you can't lift yourself out of this law of karma from the law of karma. And you have to find something that isn't bound by the same rules, and that is the divine law of life.
So we want to talk about how we're going to introduce the divine idea that you're talking about with, let's just say, the salutations.
Right. The divine idea is the spiritual truth of any and all appearances. Everything and anything that appears in the senses is world thought made visible. And world thought is the shadow of truth, or it is the reflection of the divine idea, but it's not the truth. It's only a concept of the truth. And so by us having fidelity to the underlying divine idea of whatever it is that is appearing before us will have an effect on that appearance.
So what can we look forward to when we're working on the salutations? What kind of changes are we to make?
Right. Well, I think before, basically, the way that we defined it was salutation to the moon really represents the human concept of the feminine principle. And so from that perspective, it's the physical body, it's the instincts and the appetites of the physical body, preservation, survival. Now what we want to do is change that focus from the emphasis being on the human concept to the divine idea of that feminine principle, which really is divine love.
We were talking in our Theory 2 class last night about our mentality, what we should be thinking when we're opening the Asana class and then throughout the postures. And I was wondering if maybe you could share that with us, because I think that definitely has to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's what I started out saying, that we really have to forsake all of our human thinking for this divine knowing. So by us stepping into the Asana class with the understanding of the truth of our being, that from that foundation, if I am the reflection of the perfection of being, it's a very different base of operation than if I come in and I am a physical body with needs and ambitions and a sense of purpose that also may perchance have a spiritual soul. It's a very different thing than if I know that I am an eternal spiritual being and that the body really is just a concept or a thought about that truth of my being. And so now what we're basically doing is we're working with using the body just as an indicator. Because if I examine my body and I have pain, discomfort, instability, defect, imperfection in my physical appearance, then now it is a signal for me that I have a belief in something other than the perfection of being. I have a belief in something other than this one divine life, which is perfect, whole, harmonious, and complete, which means that I have a belief in the many. From that vantage point of being able to use the signal that I get from my physical body, I really focus on changing how I'm thinking. And that's what we talked a little bit about last week, is just how radical we have to change how we think. Because we must forsake human thinking. And human thinking is basically working with the changing conditions of a personal mentality. It's our ability to form thoughts and opinions based on the information that is coming in through our five senses, which again is just an approximation of the truth. And so once we can start to understand that what we call thinking is what the Bible calls sin, then we have created the opportunity where we are willing to change and now forsake all of this human thinking for divine knowing, for knowing the truth of being, that all creation is the expression of this indestructible principle.
So in our notes, we say that we have to have, the physical body has to have a spiritual foundation. Now, I know when we're going through our asana postures, we always say we have to build the postures from the ground up. We start with our feet. So that's our foundation for the physical body. And now we're adding a spiritual foundation. So I was wondering maybe you could touch upon that for us.
Yeah, and that you'll experience as what we used to call the internal mental work. Before you would scan the body, you would look for pain, discomfort, instability. And if you found anything along those lines, then you would examine your mind. Because just like we had said, the physical body really is world thought made visible. So the foundation of the physical body is really thought. But we want to forsake human thinking, which is finite and limited, and we want to replace it with this divine knowing. That if we can actually let divine mind take over the scientific government of our being, then it will change the physical appearance for us. So before we were trying to do it humanly with positive thinking, turning your mind to your creativity, your imagination, replacing a negative thought with a new positive image, that has a certain degree of merit, and on a very fundamental level, you can change finite bad to finite good with this technique. But we want to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, which means that we must now forsake that human thinking for the divine knowing, for knowing that you are eternal, harmonious, whole, peaceful, and well now.
You did mention the phrase world thought made visible, and in our notes we say everything and anything that appears in the senses is world thought made visible. And then you go on to say in your notes, world thought is the shadow of truth. So can you talk more about that? What does it mean to be in the shadow of truth?
Well, in this model, it really means that we are sowing to the flesh, is what the Bible says. We're getting all of our information from the testimony of our senses, and it's not real. That's the one thing that I found, that science actually supports the principle that Mary Baker Eddy discovered in saying that the physical appearance is observation dependent. And so now for us to start to see that how we're thinking really is the infrastructure of what we're going to experience in our outside world. But we have to understand that if we are not thinking right, and thinking right in this model means that we have to forsake that human thinking, which is accepting the testimony of our five senses, and replace it with this divine knowing. Divine mind does not think in part. Divine mind moves from the rational, which is duality, into the absolute, which is the realms of what was called the holy.
Well, I want to talk to you more about our human concept of the divine idea. I have asked you these questions in the past, and we think that we're spiritual beings. When it comes right down to it, we are missing some really important elements here. And I wonder if maybe you can reflect on that.
Well, that's exactly why we began the show and we said that we really want to develop a demonstrable spiritual science. That if you are not able to demonstrate the power of the divine with scientific certainty, then chances are that you're trying to do this humanly. And so that's basically what we're really trying to step out of, is all of the confusion that surrounds these false beliefs and these theories and concepts and doctrines that are out there, and have basically, they don't have any principle behind them. There's only one power in this universe, and it's absolute good, absolute life. And if we don't know it aright, and if we don't acknowledge it in our consciousness, we can't activate it in our experience.
Well, this is a good place to pause to hear a word from our sponsors or listeners. We'll be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Yoga Theory 1, Human Development and the 8 Essential Stages of Kriya Yoga. This program is a comprehensive course that will help you get your arms around the science of Kriya Yoga. It provides a clear understanding of the goals and objectives behind yoga, along with the physics of spirituality. It includes the practices, supportive concepts of Kriya Yoga, and the process in human development, apotheosis, the process of the human becoming divine. A complete guide on how to become a human in the adult state. Get the light in your soul and experience the simplicity and joy of union with the divine. This course is available in live classes at the ashram or online with 8 videos or 4 CDs. Visit our website, www.ipdtransform.com, for more information. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. Swami, in our summary, I had said that individuals have a concept about this truth. And I was wondering, can we talk a bit more about the concept of truth? And we're talking truth with a capital T here.
Right. It's such an interesting thing to start to understand that what we call life is really a false concept about what is the real life underneath it. I love what Joel Goldsmith said. It's like we're the dummy trying to live without the ventriloquist. It's the analogy that I've been using is that the physical form, physical appearance is a reflection. So it's kind of like you're looking at yourself in a mirror and your face is dirty. And then you go and you decide that if I clean the mirror, I'll find solution to the dirty face. And the more you work on cleaning the mirror, the dirtier your face appears. And that's pretty much how we're working or trying to approach our lives with this false sense of identity. If we sow to the flesh, if we think that the physical form is real, we lose the spiritual foundation of it. And that's why in the Bible it says to sow to the flesh is death, but to sow to the spirit is life. And by us now starting out with an understanding of ourselves as spiritual, eternal, an expression of an indestructible principle, perfect, harmonious, and whole, and we realize that the body is just a thought about what is really there, that enables us to spiritualize our thoughts. Basically translate everything back into this one divine life, and then enable it to reappear in the truth of its being, so that it now reflects the image of the divine mind without all of the imperfections, beliefs, concepts, thoughts of the world mind.
So when talking about the divine idea, how different is that to the dream of Adam?
Yeah, the dream of Adam is really the reflection of that divine idea. It is the thought about it. And it is the belief in matters, the belief in the physical body. So we really want to try and awaken from that into the true divine idea. We want to get out of the idea into the principle.
Well, I have a question for you. And I had a dream, and in this dream, there was 2 people in this dream that had passed away and had died in the dream. So what does that really mean when we have somebody something that dies or someone that dies?
Well, again, in the truth of being, nobody is born and nobody dies. If you are eternal, there is no beginning and there is no end. It is just eternal life. And the human interpretation of that has a beginning and has an end. So the whole physical experience based on the spiritual idea isn't real.
So you're saying that the only thing that really dies is a false concept of life. We have to change how we think about it.
Right, which is basically a thought about the truth of our being. And so we continue to react and try and fix everything because we believe in matter. We believe that we are a physical body. We think we have needs. We think we have ambitions. But to forsake all of that and replace it with the will of the divine is really where you find what was called dominion. That human dominion is basically God's perfect spiritual law.
So our true self is with God, which means it goes on forever, and that's really the true sense of immortality.
Right, but that's the true sense of being. And the amazing thing that starts to happen is that the more you start to live out from the perfection of being, now you can actually step into this kingdom of heaven on earth. And you have all of the benefits that come with this divine inheritance right here, right now, and you live under the law of grace, under divine law, and you step out of this law of karma.
Well, let's get back to talking about the salutations to the moon and the salutations to the sun. You talked about the moon before. Let's continue in talking about maybe the salutation to the sun.
Yeah, salutation to the sun, again, is another series of movements to demonstrate the divine idea of the mental dimension, which is divine wisdom. Before, we would use salutation to the sun as a means of pulling us into thinking, that it represented intelligence and our mental functions, perception, reason, memory, intuition. That is the human concept of the divine idea of divine wisdom. And just like the moon is represented by the physical body and the systems that make up the physical body, that's the human concept of the divine idea, which is divine love. And so just that simple adjustment in our understanding of how we're going to approach an asana class kind of gives what we're doing a spiritual foundation. And it gives us a different framework with regard to the internal mental work that we're going to employ during the class in order to give us a better outcome.
I see. Now, you used to say all the time in asana class as well as in theory classes, and that is how we think is what we become. Is that still going to be a staple in our asana practice?
Yeah, that will not change. But again, what we have been drilling down with is exactly what we mean by how we think. Because what we have started to define is that there are modes of thought. And we really are in gratitude to Mary Baker Eddy for giving us the idea of 3 modes of mortal thought that we really have to come out of. And we represent that with the mutable signs in the image that we use for our logo, which is what we call the schematic for samadhi. And so the modes of human thinking are represented by Gemini, which is the lower mind, which is basically instinct, appetite, preservation, and survival. you've got Virgo, which is the mid-mind, and it's represented by human intelligence, perception, reason, memory, intuition. And then you've got the higher mind, which is represented by Sagittarius, which is the collective consciousness. But all of these modes all operate under the law of karma because we're getting our information from the testimony of our senses. And again, that's the shadow of truth. That is the appearance that is apart from the one divine mind, which is represented by Pisces, the 12th sign of the zodiac. Divine mind doesn't think in the rational. It doesn't work with contrast. There's no point of departure or separation. Divine mind thinks in the absolute. And it doesn't report in our five-sense mind because our five-sense mind works on contrast. And so basically what we start to do now is make our mind, the conscious part of our mind, as an avenue of awareness for the presence of the invisible, intangible presence of divine mind, which is omnipresence, it is omnipotence, and it is omniscience.
So we must have to have attention for this divine idea in order for it to activate in our experience as we know it.
Right. And that's why how we think is what we become. And so if we continue to think humanly and draw from matter and mind, we remain in this law of karma. That's the physics of spirituality. Like attracts like. But if we draw from the invisible, intangible presence of spirit, then we are drawing from the perfection of being. And that will cast a corresponding shadow.
Let's talk a little bit about this quote that we have in our notes from Mary Baker Eddy, and that is, "I am not in the body, and the body cannot talk to me."
Yeah, that actually came from a book that I'm reading that's called We Know Mary Baker Eddy, and that was written by a woman named Laura Sargent. To continue that quote, this, she told us, was the way to escape from the belief in pain and flesh. And so making pain, discomfort, defects, etc. a signal that you have a belief in something other than the one divine life. Because the language of spirit is silence, absolute silence. And when the body is silent, it is reflecting the one divine life, which is perfect, whole, and harmonious. And so what we have to understand is that there is no communication between matter and spirit. That the communication that's happening between the physical body and the mortal mind appears as pain or defect or whatever. But if we can get out of that mode of thinking and let divine mind take over the scientific government of our being, then, like we said, that will demonstrate the perfection of being. So any defect that is appearing in the physical body will no longer have the support of a thought that is creating it. It's kind of like a one-size-fits-all solution to everything.
Well, I think it's about time we have to start closing down our program for today. So listeners, please visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. If you want to have access to other of our Blog Talk Radio shows, 3/4 of the way down on that homepage, you'll see a section entitled Swami Says Recent Posts, and there'll be a bunch there listed that you can click on to further your learning experiences. And don't forget, Swami has a free webinar Wednesdays at noon. You can access that through the online classes tab from the website. And so, Swami, any other final thoughts about today's program?
Well, I would like to encourage everybody to know the truth of their being, that they are eternal spiritual beings, forever held, controlled, and governed by the divine law of life. And with that, I'll wish everybody a good day. Namaste.
And thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton along with Swami Jayananda signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.